Kaulig Racing has revealed their drivers for their All-Star car. Todd Bodine will make his NASCAR Truck Series return, and NASCAR's TV deal might include ESPN. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start with a couple of paint schemes. The first paint scheme we're going to take a look at is BJ McLeod's 2022 Motorsports game scheme that we're going to see in 2022. I really like this paint scheme a lot. This has been one of the best ones I've seen, especially with the new number placement. I think they did a really good job on the color schemes. I think this is a better Motorsports game scheme than the one last year, even though last year's was pretty good. I do like the black and the red on it. I think they did a really solid job. It looks really awesome, and I'm looking forward to see this paint scheme out on the racetrack here this year in 2022. And the other paint scheme we're going to take a look at is Alex Bowman's 2022 Ally scheme that we're going to see pretty much every single race in 2022. This paint scheme is pretty good in my opinion. I do like the white background on it. I think that one, when Ally has the white background on it, I think it looks really solid. The only issues I do have is a little bit of color contrast on the front with the red and the blue and all that stuff and all the other colors on the front of it. And I do think the number placement throws it off just a little bit. I do think the number is a little bit too far forward, but I will say I do like the black number on it. I think that overall looks really solid. But I have to say the paint scheme looks pretty overall solid in my opinion. I would give this paint scheme probably an 8 out of 10. I give the Motorsports game scheme one probably a 9 out of 10. I'd probably give this one a 7.5 to 8 out of 10. It's a little bit of a downgrade from last year's scheme, but I do still think that this scheme overall is pretty solid, and it's definitely pretty good in my opinion. I like it, and I'm looking forward to see it seems out on the racetrack here in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to turn this episode a little bit into a sourdough, as we're going to talk about, unfortunately, a couple people who passed away over the weekend. On Friday, it was revealed that Danny Earnhardt Jr., who is the brother of Dale Earnhardt Sr., who's the brother of Dale Earnhardt Sr., he unfortunately passed away at the age of 66 years old. Danny Earnhardt Jr., like I said, was the brother of Dale Earnhardt Sr., and he was a junior motorsports mechanic. He worked in junior motorsports pretty much really since the organization began, and he's been someone who's been involved in the sport for many years. So my prayers and condolences go out to the Earnhardt family and everyone, and my prayers and condolences go out to that family. The other person, unfortunately, passed away was Nancy Wood, who was the wife of co-owner Len Wood of the Wood Brothers. I don't remember how old she was, but unfortunately, she passed away this weekend as well. NASCAR did release a statement on both of them, basically saying our prayers and condolences go out to the families. Of course, she's been around for was around for a very long time. So, like I said, my prayers and condolences do go out to the families. And again, I hope that hopefully nothing else happens, but it's a really sad story for sure, and it really sucks that it happened. You don't wish it to ever happen to anybody, so it's unfortunate, and my prayers and condolences go out to the families. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Don Hawk. As Don Hawk, who's been basically advisor for Bruton Smith back in the day at Speedway Motorsports, he will leave Speedway Motorsports Incorporated to start his own sports management firm. Like I said, Don Hawk has been like an executive and advisor for Bruton Smith for a long time in our sport. He's been someone that we've known for many years, and a lot of people were wishing him the best of luck. He's been doing this for a very long time, and he's now going to go do his own thing. So that's really awesome that he's going to go able to own his own sports management firm. He's going to be able to basically go back to like running other things and stuff. And the person replacing him has not been announced at this time, but I am wishing Don Hawk the best of luck. Congrats on an incredible career. He's done, I think, a really great job, and I'm wishing him the best of luck and good luck on your future endeavors, man. Congrats on an incredible career. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Truck Series sponsor for the Atlanta Truck Series race. The Truck title sponsor is going to be the Freight 208, which means it'll be 208 miles, and instead of being the traditional laps it used to be, it's going to be 208 miles and 135 laps on the new banking. This, I believe, will be potentially the first race that is going to take place on the new banking as well. Freight Auctions have already revealed that was going to be the sponsor for the Truck Series race, but they are extending the race by at least a few extra laps and a few extra miles for the race to be a little bit longer. So I really like the title sponsor a lot. I think overall it's extremely awesome to see that, and like I said, I'm really happy for sure that is going to be the case. I think it's really great, and it's awesome, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Equity Prime Mortgage Servings, as they're going to sponsor Jesse Iwuji for 8 races in the 2022 season. More details about Jesse Iwuji Motorsports will be revealed at a later date, including car number. This is a new organization that is going to be showing up in 2022. It's unclear what manufacturer it's going to be. Rumors have indicated it could be Chevy that they're going to be working with, and potentially having a partnership with RCR. Those have been the rumors, but this is a team that's formed by Jesse Iwuji and Emmett Smith, and I hope this organization does really, really well. I think it's really cool that you have a partner that is coming on that is going to be sponsoring for 8 races. That is a ton of races going into next year that they're going to have, so I think it's really, really awesome as a whole that Equity Prime Motor Savings is going to be sponsoring them for 8 races. Great to see they have big sponsorship, and it's a great story and a great day for the sports world, to be honest with you. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Daniel Dye. As Daniel Dye's number has been revealed for the 2022 ARCA Menard season, as he will have the famous number 43 on his ARCA Menard Series car in 2022. It had already been originally revealed that he was going to have the 21, but I do believe that GMS has a little bit, with Petty basically buying up the Cup Series organization, I do think that Petty's having a little bit of influence on their ARCA and Truck Series programs, and it looks like the Daniel Dye's number is going to be 43. Now, Daniel Dye has used the number 43 many, many times, especially when he drove for under basically the Ben Kennedy's organization in the NASCAR in the ARCA series. So it's really cool to see that they're bringing back the 43, and that's a really cool number to have, especially for Daniel Dye, who will be driving full-time for GMS Racing. I do think that Daniel Dye has a really strong shot of winning the ARCA championship this year in 2021, considering GMS 22, because GMS Racing has been a team that has been really, really strong throughout the years. So that's overall really, really exciting for sure. I'm really happy about it, and I'm glad to see that Daniel Dye is bringing back the 43. I think it's really, really cool, and that's the number that he'll be using for 2022. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Discount Tire. As it was revealed on Friday afternoon, that Discount Tire is going to sponsor Austin Cindric for 13 races in 2022, and they're also going to sponsor Ryan Blaney for 2 playoffs races in 2022. I've never seen Discount Tire on the 12th car before, so that's something I'm very, very intrigued to see. But Discount Tire has had a major partnership with Team Penske since 2010, when they moved away from Roush Chevy Racing in 2009, when they were sponsoring the 6th car in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and they have sponsored Team Penske since 2010. They didn't reveal the paint schemes for this car going into 2022, but I'm very excited to see these paint schemes, because I think if we can get these paint schemes really, really soon, I think it's going to be better for everybody. So I'm overall extremely happy that Discount Tire is going to be continuing working with Team Penske going into 2022. I think that this is really, really cool, really, really exciting, and I'm looking forward to when they do finally reveal the paint schemes. I'm looking forward to see them going into 2022. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the LA Coliseum. As it was revealed, Bob Pockrass talked, someone had asked, when is there going to be construction beginning on the LA Coliseum? And Bob Pockrass responded and says that NASCAR will begin construction on the Los Angeles Coliseum on December 20th. The reason that they have not started construction on the LA Coliseum, which will begin next Monday, the reason they have not worked on that is because of the fact that there is still the college football season going on, and of course, I think UCLA plays at the LA Coliseum, so that's why they have not been able to begin construction, and they're going to be on a really big crunch time, because remember, the season technically starts on February 6th, but that's why they decided to test the next-gen car, which they are going to be racing the next-gen car. That's why they tested the next-gen car at Bowman Gray Stadium, because they were not really going to have a major opportunity to test that next-gen car at this track. So it's really at least good to see that they are beginning construction on it really, really soon. Construction begins next week. I would expect they're probably not going to work on it during a little bit of the Christmas holidays, probably on Christmas Day. I wouldn't expect them, but this isn't as big of an, it's going to be a big endeavor to get the track ready, but I wouldn't think it's going to take as long to get the track built as like bigger tracks, so that's why they probably have a little bit of a smaller window. But at the same time, it's really cool to see that they are almost close to beginning construction on that, so I think this is really, really cool, really, really awesome. I'm happy to see that they are about to begin construction on the LA Coliseum here this upcoming week. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Speedway Motorsports and Dover Motorsports' financials indications from this past week. Bob Pockrass tweeted out earlier today that the financial projections from Dover Motorsports as part of filing sale to Speedway Motorsports For your information, broadcast revenue listed is 90% of TV dollars for events. NASCAR will keep 10% of that, so 27.78% of what is listed is paid back as part of the purse. I'm not a guy that really knows much about finances. I'm not involved in the financial portion of the sport, but this does not surprise me. Speedway Motorsports tends to put a lot of the money from the TV deal into the racetracks. A lot of the TV deals goes into tracks. So what this means is that a lot of the money that is coming into this deal most likely is going to go back into the tracks, including the money that Dover Motorsports is going to be paying for next year. So that does not entirely shock me, to be honest with you, that they're only giving that much money going into next year. But at the same time, I do think in general that this does make a lot of sense. And this is the filings. We've been following the story, and the deal is expected to close here very, very soon for 2022. Remember, Speedway Motorsports is going to be acquiring both of the Dover Motorsports tracks going into next year. So those are the filings going into 2022. It definitely makes a lot of sense. And overall, it's extremely interesting going into next year. And those are the filings for 2022 in regards to that. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Wheaties. As Wheaties is going to sponsor Bubba Wallace in 2022. The number of races was not disclosed for that, but they will also have packaging, and they have a exclusive brand deal with Michael Jordan as well. And they, like I said, they'll be sponsoring Bubba Wallace in 2022, and they will be sponsoring him at the second race of the season at Auto Club Speedway. It's already been revealed that McDonald's will be sponsoring Bubba Wallace for a number of races in 2022, and now we know that Wheaties is going to be coming in to sponsor this team going into 2022. Really cool to see that another company is coming on to work with 2311 Racing. This is one thing that 2311 Racing has been able to do, is they have been able to pick up a lot of sponsors. And I will say the paint scheme overall looks extremely exciting too. I like the paint scheme a lot. I think it looks really, really incredible. I think they did an excellent job. They did a really, really great job on the paint scheme overall, and I'm really excited about it. But I think it's also cool to see they have more sponsors coming on to work with them. Of course, they're getting Monster Energy next year, which will be working with Kurt Busch, but Kurt Busch is also going to have McDonald's going into next year as well. So I think it's really, really awesome. Really, really great to see that Wheaties is going to be sponsoring Bubba Wallace in 2022. I'm overall really, really happy about this for sure, to be honest with you. On top of that, we have another sponsor that is potentially going to be sponsoring 2311 Racing, as was reported by Adam Stern, that on top of announcing a collaboration with Wheaties that includes our primary paint scheme next season, 2311 Racing today hinted that it has a new sponsorship with the fence IT company Leidos, which previously was with Bubba Wallace when he was with Roush in 2016. It's really cool to see that a sponsor that used to sponsor Bubba Wallace when he's over at Roush and Racing is going to be coming back to work with Bubba Wallace. It's great to see that older companies are going to be working with Bubba Wallace going into next year. And I don't know if it's going to be like a full-time paint scheme that is going to be working with them, or it's just going to be basically like an associate sponsor. It wasn't revealed that it was going to be like a sponsor, a primary paint scheme, because I could definitely see a Leidos primary paint scheme going into next year. But I think overall, like I said, it's really, really cool to see that Leidos is coming back to work with Bubba Wallace going into 2022. I'm really happy about this for sure, and I'm glad to see that Leidos is stepping up to the plate, and they are going to be sponsoring Bubba Wallace going into 2022. Great to see the new sponsors are coming to work with Bubba Wallace for next year. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about all the drivers that have been confirmed so far, the major drivers that have been confirmed for the Chili Bowl Nationals. Now, so far, 330 entries have been entered for the Chili Bowl, but this year's Chili Bowl Nationals is stacked for 2022. These are all the drivers that have been confirmed that are drivers that most of you probably are going to know going into next year. Kyle Larson, Sammy Swindell, David Gravel, Brad Sweet, Spencer Basin, J.J. Yeley, Tony Bruce Jr., Cannon McIntosh, Chase Elliott, Tim McCready, Santino Ferrucci, Tanner Berryhill, Shane Golovic, Parker Price Miller, Alex Bright, Casey Kane, Tanner Thorson, Darren Pittman, Brady Bacon, Carson Quaffle, Corey Schutte, Logan Seavey, Nick Drake, Todd Cleaver, Sajay Leary, Alex Bowman, Damian Gardner, Christopher Bell, Dylan Walsh, Ryan Burnell, Ryan Ellis, Zeb Wise, Jesse Love, Rico Abreu, Jerry Coons Jr., Ryan Timms, and Chase Briscoe have all been confirmed so far that are the drivers that I would keep an eye on going for the Chili Bowl. There are more entries that I would expect to be in this race. I would not be shocked if Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Ryan Newman both do eventually enter into this event. But like I said, these are all the major entries that I'm definitely keeping an eye out for in this year's Chili Bowl. I'll tell you this. This year's class for the Chili Bowl Nationals 100% is stacked. You've got a lot of talented drivers who have won the Chili Bowl. You've got Cup Series drivers racing in this. You've got drivers who were development drivers in NASCAR. You've got USAC drivers. You've got ASOC drivers in this event. And the list of drivers is growing. And like I said, I am extremely excited for this year's Chili Bowl. I think you have a really, really strong class for the Chili Bowl Nationals going into 2022. I'm extremely excited for this, and I'm glad to see that those are all the major drivers that are confirmed. There are other drivers that are expecting to be confirmed very, very soon, and we should be knowing about this going into next year really, really soon. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about all of the next-gen test drivers that have been officially confirmed for this upcoming test. Remember, there is going to be a test that's going to be taking place here tomorrow, Wednesday, and it will also be a day in the middle, which we'll talk about the first day of the test on the channel. And then on Friday, the second day of the test is going to take place. So here are the confirmed drivers that will be testing the next-gen car. Trackhouse is going to have Chastain and Suarez. Penske is going to have Cindric and Blaney on Wednesday, and then Joey Logano on Friday. RCR is only going to have Tyler Reddick show up for the test. Superhaas Racing is going to have Almirola and Briscoe on Wednesday, and then they're going to have Cole Custer on Friday. So Kevin Harvick will not be testing the next-gen car in this test. Hendrick Motorsports will have William Byron, Alex Bowman on Wednesday, and they'll have Chase Elliott on Friday. So Kyle Larson will not be with this test. I think that's because he's still in Abu Dhabi right now, so he's still coming back from Abu Dhabi at the moment. Roshan Keselowski Racing will have Brad Keselowski on Wednesday and Chris Buescher on Friday. Spire Motorsports will have Corey LaJoie. Joe Gibbs Racing will have Mark Truex Jr. And for the first time testing the next-gen car, because he's been the only driver that I know that has not tested it, they will have Kyle Busch testing the next-gen car. Kaulig Racing will have Daniel Hemrick on Wednesday and Justin Haley on Friday. Wood Brothers Racing will have Harrison Burton. 2311 Racing will have Kurt Busch because Bubba Wallace is still recovering from his injuries. Firma Motorsports will have Todd Gillen. Petty GMS will have Eric Jones on Wednesday and Ty Dillon on Friday. And then JT Doherty Racing will be the final team there confirmed that will have Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I do expect that maybe we'll see MBM show up, Live Fast Motorsports, and maybe a couple of other organizations show up to this test. There is talk that the test will most likely have two packages being tested in other aero configurations. They will be most likely testing the 550 package and also be testing the 670 horsepower package. I think that a lot of drivers will hopefully be hoping for the 670 horsepower package, but these are the drivers that will be doing the next-gen test coming up here. It's really good to see that these are the guys that will be testing, and I'm happy to see that these are the drivers testing it. And you got some really, really good and really great drivers that are going to be testing the next-gen car. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about our Motorsports, as there was a media alert that went out this Tuesday, that our Motorsports is going to reveal their 2022 driver and crew chief lineups on Thursday, December 16th at 2 p.m. Eastern at the NASCAR Hall of Fame. No one knows who's going to be driving those cars. However, there have been rumors of who potentially the two drivers are going to be. The first driver that I 100% am expecting to drive for our Motorsports in 2022 is going to be Brett Moffitt. I think Brett Moffitt is going to return to our Motorsports in 2022. He indicated this last week that he is likely going to return to the team in 2022, which makes a lot of sense. He started driving for the team, and his team really started coming them into play, and he's been one of the people that has helped our Motorsports become a very, very solid team. So I expect that he will return to our Motorsports in 2022. The other driver that I think is going to drive for our Motorsports in 2022 is going to be Jeb Burton. Jeb Burton is not returning to Kaulig Racing in 2022, and there have been rumblings and rumors for a very, very long time that Jeb Burton is the current favorite to return, to go to our Motorsports, the second car, and drive either the 02 or the 23 car for 2022. He's a driver that is one to remain in the Chevy development program. He says he's had an announcement for a very, very long time. I know that there have been other rumors that he may go to SS Greenlight Racing for 2022, but if he's going to want to have a very competitive opportunity and a good chance to run well, I think he 100% has to go to our Motorsports. I think our Motorsports is a team that is more capable of winning than right now than SS Greenlight Racing. If he goes SS Greenlight Racing, though, I would expect he'd have a very similar season to what Greg Gaulding had in 2019, which wouldn't be a bad season in my opinion, because if you run as good as Greg Gaulding did in 2019, that's a pretty good season. but I think that he's going to end up being the other driver that is announced for our Motorsports. I don't know who the crew chiefs will be. I haven't heard any indications on that, but I think the two drivers that will drive for our Motorsports in 2022 are going to be Jeb Burton and they will be Brett Moffitt, which will be two very solid drivers, two drivers I think that are about to go in their prime in their racing careers. Pretty cool to see if those potentially are going to be the two drivers that are driving for their teams going into next year. This is, in my opinion, really, really cool to see, to be perfectly honest with you. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about some of the upcoming of the free agents that are still available currently at the moment. Bob Pockers asked questions in regards to what remains in regards to potential big free agents at this current moment. They talk about Jeb Burton, but we already discussed it. Likely Jeb Burton's going to our Motorsports. So the big three free agents that are currently left at the moment. Bob Pocker says that Ryan Preece is still working on some deals for 2022, but right now he says that nothing is finalized at the moment. Meanwhile, Matt DiBenedetto and Ryan Newman he's not heard anything in regards to any possible rides, even in Cups, Xfinity, or Trucks for Matt DiBenedetto or Ryan Newman going into 2022. Ryan Preece, I think, is very... Let's talk about Ryan Preece. This is really, really good for those news for Ryan Preece fans, including myself. I want to see Ryan Preece have an opportunity to drive next year in some sort of equipment. He's got potential to be in the Cup Series, but right now there's only a couple rides that are available. You do have the two Rick Ware Racing cars, though there have been some rumors that Josh Blake could be taking one of those, and James Davison could be taking one of those, but I haven't heard anything in regards to that, but those have been some rumors flying. There's also the Spire Motorsports car, which that is definitely an open potential. There are other rides for Ryan Preece he could go to. You've got a couple Xfinity Series rides that could be available, but for trucks, you have two major rides. DJR Racing, that their second car could potentially be available for a part-time status, and also the Spire Motorsports truck. I think he has a really strong shot of getting that truck, though I think there's other drivers that could take it, like an Anthony Alfredo. In regards to Matt DiBenedetto and Ryan Newman, I think Matt DiBenedetto, Ryan Newman, their futures are really unknown at the moment. Of the two drivers, I think Matty D is the only one of these two that has a shot of getting a ride next year in any sort of capacity. Matty D could obviously go to one of the Rick Ware Racing cars. I thought Matty D could be in one of those cars, since Rick Ware does have a little bit of sponsorship for their 51 Nurtec car, but I do think that Rick Ware is going to first consider his drivers in their pipeline, though there were reports about a couple months ago that he had talked that Rick Ware has contacted Matt DiBenedetto about potentially driving for them next year. So that is possibly a driver that could be up for grabs for them. Also, Matt DiBenedetto could go perhaps to the Xfinity Series and drive for some of the smaller teams, like a Mike Harmon Racing perhaps, and drive for their teams, but he's going to need sponsorship and funding. He also could go to the Spire Motorsports truck, but I think sponsorship and funding is going to be very, very important. Matty D has talked, he's had talk with some sponsors, maybe about sponsoring, but I am a little worried about Matty D too, to be honest with you, because Matty D has sold his Lamborghini Huracan over the weekend. So that's not really a good sign, especially when you're trying to find a ride. That's not a really good sign that you have potentially a ride going into next year. As for Ryan Newman, I do not think Ryan Newman will be full-time at any NASCAR Street Series. However, I don't think Ryan Newman will be officially out of the sport. I think Ryan Newman's going to run part-time in some sort of capacity with the team next year. Maybe he goes to Beard Motorsports for the other three races, because we'll talk about what's going on with the other driver that's driving for them for the Daytona 500 here in just a little bit. Maybe Ryan Newman runs a few Truck Series races for the 39 truck that ran a BCC racing team, the BCC racing team that drove. I think Ryan Newman will be in NASCAR in some sort of capacity, but I'll be perfectly honest with you. I think all three of these drivers could be out of sport completely, but I think Ryan Preece will most likely have a ride, so we'll have to wait and see in regards to what happens with those three drivers going down the road, but those are the reports and indications on what potentially could be happening with those three drivers going into next year. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about all the charter movements that have happened so far for 2022. Bob Poggers also reported us, and these are all the big charter moves that have happened. There's been a lot of musical chairs that has been happening. Spire Motorsports has gotten their charter back from Trackhouse Racing, and they're expected to obtain one charter from Rick Ware Racing. Kaulig has bought two of their charters from Spire Motorsports. They bought two of their charters. Of course, Todd Bodine is basically the manager at Spire Motorsports, so of course it makes sense that they bought him from Spire. Trackhouse Racing has bought two of their charters from Chip Ganassi Racing. Of course, they're buying up their Cup Series program for 2022, so they bought a charter from their charters from Chip Ganassi Racing. 2311 has bought their charter from Starcom Racing, and it's kind of a partnership with Spire Motorsports at the same time as well. Petty has gotten back their charter from Rick Ware Racing, which means that Rick Ware currently has free charter, so they're expected to get their charter back sell their other charters to Spire Motorsports. And then GMS has bought their 2 charters from Petty, and they basically have bought into a partnership. This charter season, no doubt about it, has been one of the craziest, silly seasons I think ever. And I think a lot of this has been due in part to the charter movement. The charters, there have been so many charter movements that have happened. It's been absolutely nuts and absolutely crazy. And I don't know exactly what's going to go down long term down the road, especially with the charter movement. I think a lot of this, of course, and you think about how much these have cost. You think about 23XI bought their charter from Starcom Racing for $13.3 million. I think it was $13.5 million. They bought it from Starcom Racing. Kaulig Racing bought their charters for, I think, $20 million, for $10 million each for their charters. Rigger Racing's probably going to be expecting $10 million plus. They're not paying less. And we had a report not too long ago that basically charters were going through $12 million, which is up 200% from where they were last year when they were at $6 million. So charters are 100% definitely going through the roof, and there's a lot of money in regards to that. So the charter season definitely been absolutely nuts and absolutely crazy. Now, I do think at some point that money is going to cap, and it's not going to be that high long-term down the road. So I think one of the biggest things that has been really affecting why it's been cost so much for these charters is because of the fact that, again, the charters are going through the roof because teams want a lot of money. And charters do have a benefit because you can sell your teams and stuff for a certain amount of money. But there's also a negative to that because you do overall lose a lot of money. So I think it's absolutely nuts and absolutely crazy the fact that charters are going through the roof. And these are all the charter movements that have happened so far for 2022. It's been absolutely crazy. Now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Jake Paul. Now, Jake Paul had an interview recently, and Jake Paul is considering what he wants to do after his boxing career. And he says that he is considering trying out NASCAR after he completes his boxing career. Now, Jake Paul, for all of you who know, Jake Paul has been probably one of the most controversial figures on social media. If you look through his history, the guy's been involved in a lot of controversies, and I'm not overall the biggest fan of Jake Paul, to be honest with you, but I will say Jake Paul does have a pretty good boxing career for himself, though I do say that his fights have been extremely easy. The Ben Askren fight's been extremely easy, and Tyron Woodley really never gave him a fair, really didn't put all the effort in, but he will be firing Tyron Woodley for the second time after the Tyson Fury fight basically fell off because Tyson Fury basically had gotten, I think, an injury and an infection, and unfortunately, during basically camp and stuff, tried to spar and stuff, and unfortunately didn't go through. But Jake Paul's considering a NASCAR career. Now, I'll be honest with you, when I read this report, I was extremely shocked because, honestly, I don't think Jake Paul's going to fit in NASCAR. I think it'd be funny. I want to see it. I want to see it happen because I think it'd be really, really funny. It'd be really, really hilarious to see Jake Paul get into it. Now, I know that Jake Paul's been to a couple NASCAR races. I think he went to Auto Club back in 2017 or 2018, a couple years ago, before he really, really kind of got as big as he did. He's a guy, of course, that's been involved in YouTube game for many, many years, in the Vine game as well. But at the same time, I know he's also considering NFL. But at the same time, I want to see it because I want to see the memes. I want to see Jake Paul do it. I want to see people lose their minds. But also what this will show, if he does, one, it will give NASCAR attention. It will give NASCAR overall media attention because if people see Jake Paul in it, all younger little kids are going to check it out and stuff, and they're going to see that Jake Paul's involved in that. But I think what a lot of the younger kids are going to realize is, oh, it's not so easy, and it will give NASCAR at least a positive spectrum there. Now, I think that most likely if Jake Paul is to come over to NASCAR, he'd have to go through ARCA. He's not going to just jump up the Cup Xfinity truck because he'll absolutely get embarrassed. It'd be like Tia Norfleet getting involved in it because Jake Paul's never raced, I think, a stock car ever in his life. So he would absolutely struggle, and he would, in my opinion, not do very, very well in NASCAR. But in my honest opinion, if Jake Paul is to do NASCAR, that would be funny, and that would absolutely be hilarious. But it would give NASCAR at least some media attention because Jake Paul is very, very popular. A lot of people know who Jake Paul is. Even people outside of the racing circles, everyone knows who Jake Paul is. And if he got involved in NASCAR, people would definitely check out NASCAR. But I think a lot of people realize, hey, this sport is not as easy. And I'd like to see it. I think it'd be funny and be really, really crazy if he did it. But I would say that the likeliness of him doing it is not high, but if he is considering NASCAR, then oh boy, that's going to be crazy. That's going to be nuts, and it's possible that this could happen, though. But I'm going to say we'll see what happens down the road, but it might happen, to be honest with you. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Todd Bodine. As Todd Bodine is officially going to be making his Truck Series return in 2022. He will drive for Hallmark Friesen Racing for 6 races in 2022. Most likely they're going to use the 62 truck, since they used that for Jessica Friesen in the Truck Series in a couple times in 2021. He will be sponsored by Camping World throughout the 2022 Camping World Truck Series season in his 6 select races. And the 6 races that he's going to run are Las Vegas, Darlington, Texas, Sonoma, Nashville, and Pocono. He is doing this to reach 800 career NASCAR Truck Series starts, and it's been basically talked about for a while that this was most likely going to happen. Now, Todd Bodine has not raced in NASCAR in a couple years. The last time he raced, I think, was in 2017, and I think he drove for DGM Racing. So it has been a couple years since he has raced in NASCAR in general. And this will be his first NASCAR Truck Series starts since 2013 when he drove for Red Horse Racing. And I think he got a win in 2012 with them at Dover, but the last time he won was 10 years ago. Now, like I said, Todd Bodine has not really raced much in NASCAR, and like I said, has not raced in the Truck Series since 2013. But this is definitely overall interesting. A 2-time NASCAR Truck Series champion making his return. He won the championship in 2006, 2010, and that is with Germain Racing. And that's another really, really cool thing, and a part about this is the fact that you have him going back to Toyota, which he really, really made his career with Toyota in the Truck Series. So I'm overall extremely happy to see that Todd Bodine is making his return. Now, what are my expectations for him? My expectations are really not going to be through the roof for Todd Bodine. Like I said, I think it's really, really cool that Todd Bodine is making his return. But because Todd Bodine has not raced in a few years and the Truck Series is completely different than what it was 6 or 7 years ago, I think Todd Bodine is not going to run amazing. I think Todd Bodine is not going to struggle completely, but I don't think he's going to run like absolutely incredibly like top 10s. I think the goal for Todd Bodine is at least try to finish in the top 20. I think he finished in the top 20 as many races as possible because we've seen what the 52 team has done and how much they've improved. I think the goal for his is to try to finish in the top 20 as much as possible. If he can do that, I think that's really, really cool to see. But the fact that Todd Bodine is making his NASCAR Truck Series return in 2022 is absolutely awesome. He basically revealed this, I think, a couple months ago back at Talladega weekend that he was going to be returning. But the fact that he's going to be driving for Hallmark Friesen Racing, a team that I think absolutely improved from 2020, 2021, that's, I think, awesome. And I think that seeing them going to run it is really, really cool. And I'm happy to see that he'll be running it. Now, I would expect that Jessica Friesen also will be in that 62 truck at some point throughout the season, but I think it's awesome to see that Todd Bodine is coming back. I've been wanting to see Todd Bodine make his return, and the fact that Marcus Lemonis has been really, really doing a lot of good stuff and trying to bring people back out of the sport. We've seen so many people coming out of the WarWorks over the last couple of years. You've had Trevor Bayne make his return at some point with Nice Motorsports. You, of course, have Eric Darnell make his return. You've had Gray Biffle make his return over the last couple of years, and now you're going to have a 2-time Truck Series champion in Todd Bodine making his return. I think it's really, really sick. I think it's really, really awesome, really, really cool, and I'm happy to see that Todd Bodine is making his return, and I hope he does really, really well, but honestly, I'm not expecting much, but it's really cool to see that Todd Bodine is making his Truck Series return in 2022. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kaulig Racing. Now, Kaulig Racing has officially revealed their driver lineup for the second car for 2022, and this is going to be their all-star driver lineup as well. The number, which is a little bit shocking to me, is going to be the number 16. The number has not been finalized for Justin Haley for 2022. I do think we'll talk about what number it could be here in just a second, but they will be using the number 16 for the all-star car. The 3 drivers are going to be, first, Noah Gragson is going to drive for the 16 car for 14 races in 2022. His teammates are going to be Daniel Hemrick and AJ Allmendinger, who are going to split the other 24 events that are going to take place, the other 22 points races and the other 2 non-events. Like I said, Haley's number has not been announced at this time, and this race schedule has not been revealed at this point. This is crazy. Noah Gragson and Daniel Hemrick are teammates next year. I remember these two had differences last year in this past season in 2021, especially in Atlanta when they had issues on pit road. And Noah and AJ had problems. Like I think it was at Kansas. I don't remember what race it was, but they had issues at New Hampshire where they got into each other. But now they're all going to be teammates. This lineup, though, I will say is a really, really strong lineup. You've got 3 of the Final 4 drivers from the Championship 4 who are going to be teammates. And one thing that's really, really crazy, too, is you're going to have all 4 of the Final 4 for Xfinity in the Cup Series at some point throughout the season. I think that's something that is really, really cool. Now, what do I expect from each of these drivers schedule-wise? Noah Gragson, I would expect probably if he doesn't run the other race, because he's going to be having to qualify for a Daytona 500 for Beer Motorsports. I would think that if he doesn't run the other 3 races for Beer Motorsports on the Super Speedway tracks, I would assume that he'll probably take the other 3 Super Speedway races there. I think that Allmendinger is going to run all the road course races next year. I would not expect Hemrick or Noah Gragson to get those specific races, but I think that AJ will take all the road course races in 2022, considering he knows how to get it done on road courses. As for Daniel Hemrick, I expect him to probably do all the intermediate races in this car, but I think he'll be the driver for the Daytona 500 since AJ is not overall the biggest fan of Super Speed races. I would think that Daniel Hemrick will qualify in this car for the Daytona 500. But let's go back to the drivers individually. Noah Gragson, I think this is great for him in his development. I think to help him out developmentally, you got to get him some Cup Series starts. And I think especially with potentially long-term going to Junior Motorsports Cup programs, I think it's going to happen when they jump up the Cup. I think it's going to happen. I think this is really good development for him, and I think he'll do pretty solid next year in this car. As for AJ has indicated 12 to 15 starts. I think he'll do really well next year as well. He got them the first Cup Series victory, only their 6 or 7 starts, so that was really, really impressive to see. And to see Daniel Hemrick coming back to the Cup Series next year, that's really, really cool too. Daniel Hemrick has not been in the Cup Series since 2019, and I thought that there was maybe a chance of him going over to Kaulig's Xfinity Series program, especially being the defending NASCAR Xfinity Series champion. I thought that there would maybe have been a chance for him to return to the Cup Series, but I think that this overall is awesome to see that he's going to be making his return. In regards to numbers for Justin Haley, what number do I think they'll go with? I think there are 3 numbers they're potentially going to go with. I think they'll either go with the 13, but I think MEM has an indication on that, so I think MEM will take that. I think it's going to be either the 61 or the 26. The 61 I thought maybe could be the number they choose, just have it a little bit backwards. 16 for the special car and the 61 for that. And I think that those are potentially the 2 numbers that they're going to go with. But like I said, this is a dream lineup for Kaulig Racing to have 3, I think, really, really talented and really gifted drivers. What are my expectations for the team? The goal, finish in the top 20 as much as possible in the NASCAR Cup Series. Get as many good finishes as possible. If they can do that, that is really, really cool. But I think that they have shots for top 10s and top 15s. Especially on road courses, I think they can for sure 100% win the road course races next year. And I think the Super Speedway races too. Especially if Noah's in this car, I think that Noah Gragson will be very, very aggressive and he'll know what he's doing. But like I said, though, this lineup is really, really stellar. Really, really killer. I'm really happy to see this lineup, and I think that this team is going to do extremely well going into next year. And I'm very excited to see that this is going to be the Kaulig Racing lineup going next year. I'm very excited, and I'm really happy to see this for sure. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about NASCAR's next upcoming TV deal. Now, John Howard basically made some TV predictions and what he predicts the future of TV deals are going to look like. He did this for the NHL, he did this for the NFL, but he also did this for NASCAR. And John Howard basically's prediction on NASCAR's next TV deal. It will find that Fox wants to renew, while NBC Sports is more tepid. Talks will heat up at the end of next year, and Fox and ESPN will split the NASCAR package as part of a deal signed in 2023. For those who don't know, NASCAR currently has a TV deal right now that goes through 2024, and we will have a new TV package starting in 2025. We've not really had any more rumors and replication on that. We've heard NBC Sports has been a little bit involved in regards to those TV deals, but currently Fox and NBC have the seasons right now. However, I'll talk about the big thing because NASCAR and ESPN, if they are to potentially return. Here's what I think the TV deal could look like going into next year. It could be Fox and NBC Sports making its return as the 2 official brands, but honestly, I don't think that that is going to be what it is. I think the 2 potentially that could end up being is NBC Sports and ESPN. And I'll talk about why I think this could be the case, why it could be NBC Sports and ESPN. Fox, in my opinion, I don't think Fox has been really in the game, to be honest with you, with their coverage. I think if it is Fox and ESPN, we'll get to those in a second. I think NBC Sports and ESPN could potentially be the most likely to be the 2 brands. NBC Sports really has seemed to care a lot about their motorsports. Now, the big issue is of course, they have their separate issues, of course, with, of course, them not having an NBC Sports network anymore. That could potentially bring them out of the game, but I think NBC Sports and ESPN could be the 2 most likely. But if NASCAR and ESPN is the return, because this is the big one where everyone was really, really talking about. One, they've got to do better at their job in regards to broadcasting, because I think ESPN has kind of lost their edge as a group in general. Really, since NASCAR left in 2014, they have not done a really good job. However, ESPN is still, regardless how you feel, is a worldwide leader of sports when it comes to basically broadcasting. They've got, of course, fights. They've got UFC. They've got NBA. They've got NFL. They've of course got Formula One. They've got a lot of major sporting events, and they've got, of course, they're gonna have SEC football, and they have multiple channels they can put NASCAR on as well. And they would basically still more eyes and ears would go on ESPN. Then they would go on NBC, and even on ESPN2, more worldwide people would check it out. And of course, they could broadcast races on ABC, and they could put some of those big races right there. They did that with IndyCar. They put some of those big races on ABC. So they could absolutely do that if that was to be the case right there. I think that if they are going to bring ESPN back, though, because that's something a little rare, they got to work on some stuff. They need, in my opinion, to hire one guy to be the lead commentator, and I'll talk about other people they need to bring over to the booth. They need to bring Alan Bestwick back. Alan Bestwick 100% is in my opinion, the best sports commentator, not the best sports commentator, but I think the best racing sports commentator out there. The guy, I'm really ridiculous that he's not even with NBC Sports right now. The fact that and that's no disrespect to Rick Allen. I think Rick Allen's gotten better as a commentator. But I think that Alan Bestwick should be in NASCAR, some sort of capacity, should be in doing NASCAR commentaries or some sort of commentaries for Top Series. Now, he does SRX, and he did an excellent job with the SRX, by the way. But he needs to be the first person to go with ESPN. When it comes to someone who cares about what they're doing, knows how to take this job very, very seriously, and can lead a broadcast well, Alan Bestwick is the go-to guy for ESPN. They need to bring him back. There's no exceptions. If they do not put him as a lead commentator, a lot of people are going to be mad. So if they're going to put him on ESPN, they need to bring him back. You need to put him as the lead commentator. For the other two commentators I would choose, I would 100% get Dale Jr. Dale Jr., I think, has done an excellent job in NASCAR and NBC, and he brings a lot of energy, but also is very, very serious, too, and you need that energy for a booth. So Dale Earnhardt Jr. 100% would be my second choice. And the third person that I would bring back is Dale Jarrett. I bring Dale Jarrett 100% into the booth once again. I think Dale Jarrett still has it. I think he's done a really, really good job at NBC Sports, and I think he should be 100% the third person that is chosen as a commentator. So I think if they had a three-man booth, it would be Alan Bestwick, Dale Jr., and Dale Jarrett. The other big thing is the pit reporters, and I think pit reporters are absolutely going to be really, really important. So who would I choose my pit reporters? I would bring Dave Burns into there. I try to maybe bring Dylan Welch over if they can, and I bring some other people like maybe Kelly Savis. I try to get people also that work in the group in the past and try to bring back to ESPN as well. But that's how I would like to see it if ESPN wants to come back. I think ESPN definitely is in the running. Jaron Auer would not just say this if this wasn't true. So I think it could happen. ESPN does come back. So the TV deal is not far away from being finalized. I think it's going to be really, really soon before we find out what's going on with the TV deal. And I think we'll probably have more words on what the two favorites or potentially the big brand. Because if I had to choose, I would go with one group, and that'd be NBC Sports doing the whole season because that make a lot more sense. It would grow the sport overall. But I think NASCAR is going to have two broadcasters, and I think it could be NBC and ESPN or Fox Sports and ESPN. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But ESPN has a really strong shot of making its turn to NASCAR here very, very soon. So, anyway, that is it for today's NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, turn notifications to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my page as well. Let's get below for that and combo your thoughts on today's video. What are your thoughts about ESPN potentially returning to NASCAR here in the next couple years? Are you excited about that or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Kaulig Racing's All-Star Cup Series lineup? Do you like that lineup or not? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.